on behalf of All India NABARD Employees Association, I thank you CFA and all the participants here. Heartily welcome for this very important topic of discussions. The title of the topic being Cooperatives, Cooperative Banks and the relevance for the future of India. Now, let me greet you because we are sitting on 5th of July. Just yesterday was the International Day for Cooperative as per ICA. And the year 2020 happens to be the 125th year of International Cooperative Alliance. So we are holding this meeting at a very, very crucial time and at a very significant time. Now, I would like to structure my discussions on this, and I am really elated to have the wonderful presentations of the earlier two speakers, including the presentation by Comrade Kripakaran. Now, I would like to structure my presentation within a span of say around 20-25 minutes. And the structure of my presentation will be the role of cooperatives in the global pandemic. Right now, what we are observing now, a little bit of delving on that, how cooperatives are wonderfully responding along with the public sector organizations in comparison to the private sector organizations in mitigating the problems and addressing the problems of the people. This is the structure number one. Then I would like to go to the some of the experiences now gathered over a period of time, especially during this COVID pandemic, how cooperatives throughout the world are responding. 1 or 2, 4, 5 examples I would like to deal with that. Then historically, how cooperative systems have evolved in our country, especially since the early part of the 20th century. A little bit of understanding on that, especially on Rabindranath Tagore, how he viewed cooperative, because many of us may not be aware that he was one of the pioneers of the cooperative movement in India. Apart from his usual field of literature, poetry, he had wonderful ideas about cooperative. He himself formed one agricultural bank with his Nobel Prize money in now Bangla, which is situated now in Bangladesh. The name of the bank was Potishor Gramin Bank, to help the poor peasantry. This is one thing. Then about the understanding of Comrade Lenin about the cooperative structure. And then slowly I will deal directly with this, the financial cooperatives in India, basically the field with which NABARD and RBI deals, the urban cooperative, then the short-term cooperative structure, which is already being dealt a bit by Professor Siram and Dr. Dhawale also. And then a little bit of discussions on the problems being faced and the attacks on the cooperatives today, especially in view of this recent ordinance. And then I will conclude with some concluding notes. This will be basically my structural presentation. Now, the globally, as you all know, especially the neoliberal economy today is in tatters now, is in absolutely in tatters. And it is very open to the people of the world that the neoliberalism today, the way it has attacked the people, lives and livelihoods, especially, got fully exposed after this new COVID pandemic. The neoliberalism has rather aggravated the problems of the people. And we all know that the virus is the problem of is the product of the nature. But this neoliberalism is killing the people, especially the disadvantaged people throughout the world. Now, there are wonderful examples throughout the world where the cooperative sector has been responding wonderfully along with the public sector, as I told you, that in comparison with the private sector. In India also we have seen, especially the airline and other sectors, how all these private sector have almost deserted the people. And only it is the public sector institutions, be it coal, be it electricity, be it airline, be it railways, everywhere they are functioning wonderfully. Now, the same situation is there in Australia, in Iran. And I was going through a very interesting thing about Iran, that the women cooperative movement in Iran, they are the most vibrant participant in mitigating the problems of the people, especially during this COVID-19. especially in Tehran and other places. In our neighboring Nepal, which is very interesting, the cooperatives, they are opening a virus control center has been set up by the cooperatives in the Manmohan Memorial Hospital in Nepal. In Korea, in Palestine also, the cooperatives have been, especially the agricultural cooperatives, have been wonderfully responding. So the 33rd meeting of the World Congress of to celebrate the ICA's 125th year, as I told you, that incidentally that falls in the year 2020. So they have come out to a motto that deepening of the cooperative identity, that is a motto, deepening of cooperative identity, and strengthening the principles of the cooperative values like self-help and others. Now, what is happening that Mr. Henry Merry, the secretary of ICA, he was a very illustrious figure. He was the secretary of ICA from 1913 to 1939. So he has told that united and common action on the part of the cooperators is necessary. At that point he told, but it has deep relevance in today's world and especially in India. The organizations of capitalism, the private trade and industry will not remain meekly in the background to accept the crumbs that fall from the conference table. We are already seeing that during the pandemic, including in India, how the billionaires are amassing more and more wealth, be it Mukesh Ambani or somebody else, how they are becoming much more richer even during the global pandemic. So he told at that point of time that the industry and trade, capitalist industry and trade, will not remain meekly in the background to accept the crumbs that fall from the conference table. Neither should we, here it is very important, should we, but rather take all activities to present the claims of the organized consumers and the superlative value of the cooperatives economic system as an equitable means of sharing the world's resources and guaranteeing the good relations between the people. So the same thing applies today. And I would like to go through now a little bit of historicity about the cooperative principles, which Tagore has talked about in the early part of the 20th century. He told in one of his very famous writing called Samobai Niti, the cooperative principle, if you translate it in English. Interestingly, he penned this Samobai Niti after his visit of the United States in 1920. And there he penned, I did not go into the very detail of it because of the paucity of time. Now, he told that time when many people learn to convert their individual power into collective wealth through the intermediation of cooperatives, then it can be said that the foundation of the true human freedom and democracy is laid down. Foundation of true human freedom and democracy is laid down. So that was a very wonderful observation by Tagore in his works of Samobai Niti. Comrade Lenin also, as you all know, in his two famous articles in Pravda on May 26 and 27, 1923, dealt with the whole structure of this cooperative, how, especially during the new economic policy in the then Soviet Union, how cooperatives can play a wonderful role in ushering in a new era. Now, I would like to go very quickly into the Indian part of it in today's context, especially when after this ordinance, it is made out to be, especially after the PNC scam and others, as if the scam is only germane to the cooperatives. All other banking structures are relatively, they are free from scams, which is absolutely untrue. Our experience and the stats from RBI, statistics from RBI say that, but it is made out to be that as if the cooperatives are basically they are weak and they are basically deal with the corrupt people. Many frauds, they take place only. So these are the notions being deliberately spread. I would say deliberately. I don't say that there is no iota of truth in it. A lot of truths are there. especially as Dr. Dhawale has rightly pointed out. I mean, the cooperatives in many parts of this country, they have been captured by the rich peasantry. But still, if you see both the templates, means urban cooperative banks as well as the rural cooperative banks, especially connected with agriculture, the cooperatives have performed wonderfully, I would say, even during so much of challenges. Now, I would go through a little bit into that aspect of it. And I would like to quote from the legislative reforms in statutes. This is a Reserve Bank report. Whatever the statute changes, this ordinance, and before that, March 20, bill was introduced, as you all know, in the Parliament to amend the Banking Regulation Act. In fact, this ordinance, which came out on 26th of June 2020, is almost an exact replica of that bill. What I would like to say, that even in that committee of that legislative committee of legislative reforms, they have spoken wonderfully. They could not say that the cooperatives have been totally malfunctioning. Let us take about the urban cooperative banks. What was the observation of that committee of RBI, under whose recommendations this BR Act Amendment Bill was introduced and this ordinance was introduced? The committee admitted that, I read verbatim from that RBI report, as indicated earlier, the committee organized a survey of 103 clients belonging to 13 UCB, urban cooperative banks. More than 80% of the clients stated that they have become members of the urban cooperative banks because they were not entertained. They were not entertained by commercial banks. Similarly, more than 80% of the urban cooperatives said, 80% of the respondents, they said that urban cooperative banks provide faster and more personalized service compared to the commercial banks. Data with RBI shows that 84.1% of the urban cooperative banks which reported data fulfill the stipulated priority sector norms. You know that in urban cooperative bank, the stipulation of the priority sector norms is around 60% of the total lendings compared to 40% of the commercial banks. And this committee has lamented, that same committee, that statute committee of RBI, they have lamented that even 40% of the priority sector lending norms, in which agriculture falls, as you all know, the commercial banks are not being able to fulfill that. And there is the shortfall is, as you all know, is being contributed to Rural Infrastructure Development Fund, RIDF fund of NABARD. So this committee has very clearly admitted that even urban cooperative banks have been performing wonderful. Now, I would like to go to the aspects of the rural cooperative banks a little bit. And as you all know that there are state cooperative banks, STCBs, there are around 33. And if you go to, I don't want to, because of the paucity of time, don't want to burden yourself with so much of statistics, but NABARD has drawn a very wonderful thing, that is about the supervisory ratings. This is very important because you know that these urban cooperative, rural cooperative banks are basically supervised by NABARD on behalf of RBI. Now the ratings, if you find, very interesting statistics, and this is culled from the NABARD annual report 18-19, and there it is very clearly told that in 2017 there are 5 categories of supervisory ratings given by NABARD: A, then B plus, then B, C, and D. A is the highest grade, then B plus, B, C, D. Now, out of this 33 state cooperative banks, around 24, that means around 72% of the state cooperative banks, they received a supervisory ratings from NABARD of A or B plus. So either they are best or second best. Then you come to DCCB, District Central Cooperative Banks. Supervisory ratings given by NABARD is, out of 364 District Central Cooperative Banks, 208 were given A category or B plus category. That means almost 57%. If you compare it with a year ago, means 2017, if you compare, then as far as the district central cooperative banks are concerned, 45% received the supervisory grading of around A or B plus. From 45%, it has increased to 57%. Now, in spite of all this and the cooperatives better approaching and financing the small farmer, marginal farmer, even among the so much of difficulties and problems, now one very, very disturbing area which we have noted, apart from the asphyxiation of the functioning of NABARD, which all of you have talked about very rightly, and as you all know that the long-term agricultural finance is basically suffering because Reserve Bank has stopped financing the National Rural Credit Long-Term Operations Fund and National Rural Credit Stabilization Fund, which was under the statute. It is still there under section 42 and 43 of NABARD Act and the relevant provisions of the RBI Act. RBI is supposed to contribute out of its profit a substantial amount to these funds, which go in favor of catering to the needs of the long-term needs of the Indian agriculture. But since the neoliberal policy was launched from 1992 onwards, this transfer of funds from RBI to NABARD was stopped, and entire RBI funds now, as you all know, that it is going to Government of India, either to balance their fiscal deficit or RBI surplus is going to the government. Now, a very disturbing trend as this has actually pushed NABARD to go in for more and more market borrowings. More than 80% of NABARD resources today are basically subscribed by the market borrowings. Now, in order to earn profit, so NABARD is very systematically pushed to finance the NBFCs, non-banking finance corporations. And NBFCs, then microfinance institution, Professor Sriram has talked about, then SFB, small finance banks, and all these things. One very disturbing statistics for us, this has come out of the NABARD annual report as well as from the RTI queries, that from 2014-15, total NABARD refinance to NBFC, then MFI and SFB, small finance bank. There were only three financing was there in 2014-15. Total amount refinanced was 130 crore, 130 crore. 2018-19, as per NABARD annual report and RTI queries, there are 29 financing entities, NBFCs and others, MFIs, and the amount of refinance given by NABARD has zoomed to from 130 crore in 14-15 to 22,746 crores of rupees. 22,746 crores of rupees. So it is, I was calculating, almost my calculator was jamming. It is an increase in refinance to the extent of 17,396% increase in favor of the NBFCs. So there lies the problem, that this particular ordinance, which was given on 26th of June, it should be viewed in conjunction with the bill to amend the Banking Regulation Act as far as the cooperatives are concerned, which was placed in the Parliament in March 2020, but could not be taken up because Parliament is not functioning, as you have all told. There are certain very disturbing trends are there. But I don't see this particular ordinance in isolation. Why? I will come to that in a moment, in my concluding part of it. Now, cooperative ordinance, if you see, there are certain very dangerous trends and a lot of articles are coming. Yesterday in Kerala, I know many of you may be aware, there were 500 demonstrations throughout Kerala against this ordinance. Maharashtra government, many state governments, Kerala government, many state governments have opposed this. Now, my concern and our concern as the representatives of the trade unions, especially Bank Employees Federation of India, All India NABARD Employees Association, and other progressive trade unions, our concern is that the very essence of the cooperatives, that is sought to be killed. The motto is killed. Why? Nobody is opposed to the RBI supervision. Rather, this dualism of control you see the supervisory ratings that I just talked about. This increased supervisory ratings for the STCBs, DCCBs have been achieved even with duality of control. So dualism of control by RBI as well as the RCS or the respective state governments, that did not come in the way of better functioning of the rural cooperatives as well as urban cooperatives. 7 except the examples are there. PMC Bank, other banks, Mapuso Bank has been closed, others. But there are certain areas of this ordinance which is very disturbing. I would just like to quote 1 or 2 of it. One is the point number 3, the article number 3(2) of the ordinance. It says that the cooperatives now, they can invest, in verbatim I'm reading, in place of the words other creditors, the words or grant any loans and advances or make investments in any credit instruments. What does it mean? So the cooperatives now will be legally empowered to finance even the corporate bonds. So now the money will fly out of cooperative, and the Reserve Bank Committee on Statutes, they have told that when they discuss the matter with several state governments, and it is documented in that report of RBI, that many state governments had opposed this idea on the ground, on the principal ground, that the money will flow out of cooperatives, which is very, very dangerous. And then the question of whole lot of selling of shares of the cooperatives. Earlier it was permitted to sell the shares only to the member. Now by virtue of this, one can sell shares to the outside, anybody within the area of operation of the cooperatives. So this will lead to corporatization of cooperatives. This will lead to, we are afraid, corporatization of cooperatives. Now a very important point, that this cooperative, this ordinance, or a whole lot of attacks on the cooperative, one synchrony is has to be noted. There are 3 ordinances recently made on the field of agriculture, as you all know. One is about this contract farming, permitting contract farming, then amending the APMC Act, and as well as the other one is about this removing the stock holding limits of the agricultural trade, agri-trade. Now, all these 3 different ordinances, again, this trespass into the area of the state. Cooperatives is in the state sector, we know, the state list, under the entry number 32. Same thing, agriculture is also in the state sector. These 3 ordinances, along with the ordinance on cooperative, that shows that there is a holistic design, and we should not miss the wood for the trees. And the basic aim is to somehow refashion the entire thing based on the corporatization of agriculture. And if the corporatization of agriculture is to succeed in India, the essential financing wing for the peasant agriculture, which is cooperative, that has to be killed, asphyxiated, and weakened. So that is the area where I think that this entire attack of centralization, which Professor Sriram also has very rightly pointed out, very nicely pointed out, has done. So I will end with that, with one very interesting quote. And I'm tempted to quote from Jawaharlal Nehru's, I'll end with that, Discovery of India. And the entire attack of the Indian democracy, cooperative is obviously is a part of democratic institution, one of the wonderfully functioning democratic institutions. The entire attack emanates from the lack of freedom. And the ruling class today in India, they are afraid of freedom. Freedom is being attacked everywhere. So I would like to quote from Discovery of India by one of the pioneers, that is Jawaharlal Nehru, and he quoted Upanishad, and that's something which wonderfully that appealed me. Many of you must have read that also. Just a sort of recollection. He told that there is a question in the Upanishads to which a very curious and yet significant answer is given. Nehru has written. The question is that what is this universe? From where does it arise? Where does it go? The answer is, quote, Nehru has quoted from Upanishad, in freedom it arises, in freedom it arises, in freedom it rests, and into freedom it melts away. Wonderful quote. In freedom it arises, in freedom it rests, and into freedom it melts away. Then Nehru has written, what exactly this means I am unable to understand, except that the authors of the Upanishads were passionately attached to the idea of freedom and wanted to see everything in terms of it. And today, comrades and friends, this very idea of freedom, very idea and notion of this democracy, of which cooperative is definitely is an essential adjunct, is being attacked. And so let us get united and let us take a holistic view about the attacks of the cooperative, because as already being shown during COVID pandemic and others, the future lies with public sector, the future lies with the social control of the economy, more and more social control of the economy. And as you all know, even Financial Times of London has recently written a wonderful editorial. There they have very clearly told that the existing paradigm of economic thinking needs a drastic change and more socialized way of production. That is the future.